I just wanted to share with you some knowledge that has helped me along my journey in trying to follow the law of God, trying to adhere to the instructions that God gave us in His law given to Moses. Along my journey, I found that it was pretty tough to find out which path was right, which path was wrong. There's so many sects of Christianity, so many sects of Judaism. One teacher tells you this, one teacher tells you that. Things have been added, things have been taken away. One of the things that I remember coming across is when I came out of the idolatry aspect of it and started to follow the law, I took hold of a sect of Judaism that looked at the Torah and looked at the law as a list of 613 commandments, so to speak. And what I found was that it was really hard to follow the Torah that way because I was so mindful. I was overthinking everything and looking at everything and trying to check off and check on everything that I was doing. And it became more of a burden than it was an instruction for our lives. I don't think we should look at the law of God and the instructions that God gave us in such a small perspective and such a zoomed in perspective, like verse by verse. I think it was given more so to be more of a widened perspective that we can follow and live our lives and adhere to the principles given. You have to remember that the law of God was first given to Moses and the priests, and it was only expected to be heard by the people once every 7 years in the Feast of Tabernacles. So if that's the case, and if we were supposed to only hear the law once every 7 years and be expected to follow it, then understand that what the people heard in those days was a more widened perspective. And I think ever since we have gotten into the modern day and age where everything's so widely available, we don't even use paper anymore. But try to put yourself in the aspect of the people in those days when there weren't even printing presses. People didn't have their own copies of the law. Keep in mind that the king of Israel at the time was told in Deuteronomy chapter 17 that he was supposed to write 2 copies for himself so that he would always have a law and a copy of it. Now, why did he have to do this? He had to do this because the availability of paper and making copies of this law was not like it is today. Today, we can go and get a copy, and we have a copy on our phones, we have a copy on our tablets, we have a copy paperback, we have a hardback edition. So everything is more widely spread, and information is so much more available now than it was back then. And I think that can be a good thing and it can be a bad thing because it is not the way that I think that it is best to be looked at. Not everything is a ritual, for example. I think we've taken the most basic fundamental things that are given in the law of God and turned them into rituals that are not needed. We've turned the law, we've turned the Torah into something that it is not. More or less, we've tried to make it into a list of do's and do nots, things that you check on and check off, and we've turned it into a scavenger hunt rather than a way of life. And I was just thinking about that today, and I just thought that I would share that today because I think a lot of people go through this part on their journey, and you have to get past that part because it can become burdensome to do the instructions of God that I think nowadays, looking at it, I believe they're very simple. So my advice is to just take the law, look at it, forget that there's even verse numbers, forget that there's chapters, just look at the instruction being given and get a widened aspect, get an eagle eye view of the scriptures and the instructions, and I think that's going to help you a lot more in your life, and I think that's going to help you understand it better. And if you understand, if you study to understand rather than to memorize, then you'll be able to apply the knowledge and recall it. Early on in a person's life, we're always taught to memorize scripture, and I think this is the wrong way of going about it. I think we should try to understand the scripture, because if we memorize, if we try to force ourselves to memorize scripture, the problem is that we will just be focusing on the word order and what it says rather than the instruction that is being given. So yeah, just like it says, you shall bind these words as a sign on your right hand and as a memorial between your eyes. That doesn't mean something literal. It just means something that you wear proudly. When you rise up in the morning and before you go to bed, you should always have these words on your heart, just as Moses told us. Another way of saying that today is that you should know these words like the back of your hand. And you can do that nowadays. You have the availability of reading these texts anytime you want. So I hope this is a help to you and on your journey. And I wish I was told this in the beginning on my journey. It would have made things a lot more helpful. So I just thought I'd share that aspect today and that perspective. And I thank you again for watching, and I'll see you again in another video.